Admit everyone, what a time to be alive. Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to a D-TRO webinar number 5. In traditional fashion, we are recording this and we'll have it up on the YouTubes. I'm in an exciting race against time from a personal point of view. 1 hour 15, 42% remaining on this laptop. So let's see if that goes down as we use the power of Teams. But we've got a tremendous agenda today. It's a very exciting time on the project. I know I probably say that all the time in my role as hype man, but it is a genuine key moment for us just right now. We'll tease out why during the webinar. I'm joined by the usual all-star cast of contributors, so look forward to that. Let's move forward to the next slide. And you can see we've got a packed agenda. We're going to hear from John Cooper about the latest from the DFT. In the usual fashion, we'll hear from John Harrod Booth and Gareth Tilley about private beta and the data model. We have, as a very special guest appearance, our user researcher Lydia to talk about that progress down the line. We'll get the usual questions and answers. So as always, get your questions into the chat. And we might have some Mentimeter fun from John Cooper as well. Oh, crumbs, don't let Tony Hurley in. Oh no, too late. Right, let us move forward without further ado to John Cooper and his update from the DFT.
Thanks, Paul, and hi everyone. Yeah, we'd like to give you a quick update of stuff that's happened since our last webinar back in September. Of course, the biggest thing to announce in the last few weeks has been that we have finally launched our private beta as of last Tuesday, the 15th of October. We are now, therefore, accepting live publications of digital TROs to the D-TRO system from a select cohort of specially invited private beta participants. Gareth Tilley will be giving you some more updates on how we've been doing that very shortly. The private beta, we hope, will lead into a public beta, and the current anticipation for public beta is a start date in January 2025. Also, as part of the launch, we have been updating the data specification. We're now running on version 3.2.4. And John Harrod Booth will be giving you a full data spec update later on in the webinar. The associated technical documentation has also been updated. This is there's user guides, interface control documents. There are example files. There's the schema and there's the data model, and there are some other things there too. These are all housed for your reference on our public GitHub. And I'm pleased to report that one of the major reasons we use GitHub is to let the announcements about issues be made by participants on the project, and it's really going well. We're getting a good steady stream of comments in. We're trying to act on them as soon as possible, and we are closing them down and trying to keep up with the rate at which they are raised. We're holding steady at the moment, I believe. Also, following on from the last round of webinars and our launch event last week and a technical webinar, but before that, we've been continuing to do updates to our frequently asked questions. We are even trying to get to a state where even the thorny ones that we haven't quite yet got right are still updated. So please bear with us. In the next round of updates, we will address those, as well as the new ones that come in this webinar and through other routes. Speaking of which, we would like to remind you about the TCF website and the YouTube playlist. The recordings of all the webinars, including this one, go onto the playlist, and we also update the TTF website to tell us about where it all is. Finally, a shout to our user research wing, led by Lydia, who's going to explain a bit more in detail about that. This is a very key part of private beta, and we have been doing all sorts of different types of UR engagement, and it's all coming together, and we're learning, and we're improving things as we go along. So that's a quick update on where we've got to with the project, and now back to Paul.
Thank you very much, John. Well, what a treat now. We get to hear from the man himself, Dr. Gareth Tilley, to update us about private beta. Gareth, take it away.
Thanks, Paul. So I just wanted to go through, just remind people, I know people are really familiar with this by now, just to remind people of the onboarding approach, but also just give some details, some of the stats around kind of where we've got to with things. So as everyone knows, I'm sure folk are very familiar now that we've got a two-stage approach for onboarding. We've got the integration environment, that's our test environment. That's been live since the 17th of September, and it's been really successful of enabling the testing of the onboarding process, but also people have been able to test publishing and consuming example and test D-TROs in there, which is great. We're going to keep that environment open. It's not going to be closed or anything now. We've got production live. We will be keeping the integration environment open, and we're still looking for people to onboard via the integration environment first to test that, and then move on to production when they've completed that process. So as Paul and John have said, the really good news is the production environment is now live. That's been live since the 15th, and we've already got people onboarding to that too. So in terms of stats, we've had 11 organisations on board to the integration environment. Principally, that's been on the on the digital solution provider side and the TRA side. And we know some of the data consumers, some of those haven't fully onboarded because they're looking for things to go effectively live. So we're expecting that number to increase. And then in terms of production, we've already got 3 organisations onboarded to the production environment, and we've already got D-TROs in there, which is absolutely fantastic. So as of this morning, we've had our first D-TROs fully published to the live service, which is brilliant news. So just a bit about this, the second stage for onboarding to production. A reminder, people have heard me say this before, but this is for real data and only, not test data. And you will need to link, if you're a digital solution provider, the D-TROs need to be linked back to a traffic regulation authority. If you are a traffic regulation authority and you create your TROs with a digital solution provider, and they're onboarding to the production environment and linking to yourselves, then there's no need for you to do any onboarding. I just wanted to reiterate with that because we've had a couple of questions about that. So the digital solution providers will set up the interface aligned to the correct TRAs, and then there's no need for the TRA to do anything unless they have their own solution and they're directly uploading to the service. The service for production, the onboarding is the same as it was for integration. We're aware that some of the emails that are automated don't give as the kind of the detail and the information that we'd be expecting. We're looking into that. The process is the same. So once you've had your email address and your email validated, you still need to send us your app ID and your app name. And if you can send that via email to the CSO, as is in the onboarding documentation. So if you follow the onboarding documentation, that should be totally correct and enable you to onboard fully satisfactorily. As you know, this process is managed by the central service operation team. And if you've got any questions, just drop us a line. But also just a reminder, some of the processes aren't automated. So, we're not manning it 24/7. So we check, throughout the day and everything, the working day. So we're pretty prompt at turning stuff around, hopefully. So that's the onboarding to production. And then I just wanted to recap on the cohort we've got for a private beta. So we've got over 30 TRAs who've expressed interest and completed the form for that. So thanks again for doing that for those TRAs. We've got 6 digital solution providers and 5 data consumers on board as well. So we think that's a really great cohort. It's what we were looking for to make sure we've got a really good cross-section of users to test the service fully. And just a shout out, if you're a TRA and still wants to be part of this private beta part of the program, then please drop us a line and let us know through the usual email address. So that's d-tro@dft.gov.uk. Paul, I think that was all I wanted to say around the onboarding. So back over to you.
Well, no, stay with me. Question for you.
Yeah.
Who has been onboarded?
So we've got KLS systems onboarded. We've got Courseware onboarded. So they're fully onboarded. And then we've got a couple of other DSPs who are just starting the onboarding process as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Gareth. Great stuff. Great stuff. Okay. I don't want to get into the chat too much now. We'll save that for the Q&A. John, am I right to say that it is now time for a little bit of Mentimeter?
Yes, thanks, Paul. And I put the details in the top of the chat for joining this. I'm going to make the screen live as well so that we can see this going on, and there is a second slide as well. So just give it a while to people to get mobilized with either their desktops, their mobile devices with the Mentimeter app to scan that QR code. You can't click on that link, but you can click on the link in the chat that takes you directly into this. And if you're just listening out for the code, it is 74470251. That's 74470251. Okay, right now we're gonna switch the sharing. I'm gonna now share my screen and go into present mode. Are we now showing the screen? Can somebody just confirm?
Well, I can see it, John.
Okay, great. So they were on the first question here, which is, which aspects of the D-TRO engagement program do you find the most helpful? And here you should be able to select as many as you like. We'll leave that up for a bit longer. We're at 51. We're trying to just find out from you what you think about how we're running the projects and the methods of engagement that you like to use. Thanks, Lydia, for putting the link in again. We're creeping up on numbers. Maybe we'll just let it go for another 30 seconds whilst this one is on. Get up to about 60, 70 perhaps. But there's some good stuff coming in there. Okay, I'm going to switch it over in a few seconds, so get ready. Okay, great. We'll move on to the next question. This is all about the frequency of how much you hear from us. Are we getting it about right? Or would you like more? Or there's enough of that John Cooper fella on my screen. I don't want to see him so much. So we'll let this one run for a bit too. We don't want to be bombarding you with stuff on this, but there's a lot to say, and it's all about the timing and how you hear from us. Obviously, with the recordings, you can replay us if you like. There's all the reference material to read, and you can raise issues on GitHub, or you can email our mailboxes. Looks like we're getting it about right on this one, because just right is a hugely dominant figure here. So on that, I think that pretty much seals that one, really. I'll hand you back to Paul. We'll move on to the next section. I will just leave this one active, but I'll stop sharing the screen, and Gareth, if you can bring up the slide deck back up, great.
Thank you very much, John. I foolishly didn't make a note of the running order at the start of the webinar. So, I was gonna say it's a test of memory for me, and I believe it's John Harrod Booth to speak to you next. But there we go. John, take it away.
I gave you a prompt, Paul. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm John Harrod Booth, supporting DFT. A few words on the data specification. We fully well recognise that we're going from a stage where we had a specification and a skeletal server alpha, and we're bringing that into beta now, into private beta, and we're ironing out a lot of wrinkles, and so we've been through a cycle of updating the specification quite quickly. The latest release of the specification is there to address issues that by a vast majority have been raised on GitHub, so you can go into GitHub and you can see all of those issues. I hope that we are as promptly responsive as we can be, acknowledging those issues, and we are trying to address them as quickly as we can. So the approach we've adopted with the current release, which was released on 17th last week, is really to look at fixing minor inconsistency issues, and we've done a triaging, as you have to do in these instances. So in order to be as fast as possible, we've triaged it and said, do changes that are necessary affect the code base, the software base of the central service. If they don't, then we've introduced them. If they do, then we're holding them back. We are doing that in a way so that we don't delay more than necessary at this vital time of getting you up to speed and able to do stuff. Of course, there will be changes to the specification moving forward, but certainly as it stands at the moment, if we do not have any critical issues arising in 3.2.4, then we're likely to hold any future update for some time to later in private beta, if that's required. We will, as we move forward to public beta early in 2025, then do a specification update to address all of the backlog of things that we have outstanding. Next slide, please, Karen. So we have a managed process in the background. Every time anybody raises an issue, be that through GitHub or email or whatever the means might be, of a technical nature, we're recording those, we are triaging them and assessing how to address them, and trying to do that across a range of different artifacts. So when we say data release, the content of the slide doesn't say this, but we're talking about updating the data model itself, the JSON schema that comes derived from that data model, the sample file, JSON sample files that should match the schema, the validation rules we operate on, and interface control documents, which define the APIs both for consumers and data publishers. And so we're having to do all of that in synchronicity and trying to ensure that they're all synchronized and consistent. So it's not an overnight job to do that and to run it through a process of QA in the background. So that's what causes any delays when we are trying to update. And we're trying to do that as efficiently, as quickly as we practically can. So there are some issues which are currently pending, being held for a next release, and we can certainly make information available on what those are, but for the moment we believe that 3.2.4 should be viable, but of course we're open to comments coming in, preferably by GitHub. Next slide, please. Coming off the data specification core topic, and just a plug for a thing I've mentioned a couple of times before. The data model is made up of a set of lists. You can see on the right-hand side, we've got lists of regulation types, list of vehicle types, vehicle usage types, and so on and so forth. And there's maybe about 40 lists in the model as a whole. And the ones in green there are really the content that you find in TRO, the critical content you find in TROs. And we are trying to ensure as much consistency as we can. So the spreadsheet that you're looking at there, which is available through the link on the GitHub site, shows you all of those, all of the values that are in all of those lists, and where we have it, if they link across to a legally recognized definition, what that legally recognized definition is and where it comes from. We have done that as a piece of work which is aimed in the future to come in line with the data model, is in the data model in reality, but would actually be much more visible in the data model, so that we're really encouraging common use of standardized terms. And so I really strongly encourage, and DFT strongly encourage, people to take time and review that where possible. It's absolutely certain there will be entries in some of these lists where authorities will say you're missing things. It's absolutely certain. So it's quite important that we get that sort of feedback. We'll also be trying to measure that against what we see coming in through the beta service itself. And that was where I was going to stop.
Thank you very much, JHB. That was great. Always nice to get some new voices on the webinar. And it's my great pleasure now to hand over to our user researcher, Lydia. Lydia, take it away.
Great, thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. As Paul just said, I'm Lydia, and I'm the user researcher on the project. So I'm going to give you a quick update on what I've been up to so far on D-TRO, and then also the ongoing research activity that will be running through private beta. So if you were in the private beta launch meeting last week, you'll have heard me explain the importance of gathering feedback and conducting user research to help us refine and improve the D-TRO service, as well as to help us to prepare for GDS, or the Government Digital Service Beta Assessment. So over recent months, I've been conducting kind of various different strands of research activity across 3 main user groups. So that includes traffic authorities, or traffic regulation authorities. We like to use the acronyms TRAs a lot, digital solution providers, and data consumers. But essentially, I'm looking to understand more about all of these different users' needs, processes, any pain points or concerns that they might have in relation to D-TRO and the supporting services, and have been regularly feeding back these insights to the team. So just to provide a quick overview of the research that I've conducted so far. So I've fielded a few different surveys now. 2 of those have gone out to all traffic authorities in order to understand the TRO landscape kind of at zoom out, bigger picture perspective. So, for example, how many traffic authorities are using a digital solution provider? Which providers are they using? Are they using an in-house solution? Things like this has just really helped us to understand D-TRO readiness at a high level. I've also surveyed 20 county councils. So this was about investigating the delegation of TRO creation in county councils and non-metropolitan district councils. So I did some follow-up interviews there to understand the processes and how that works. And more recently, I've also surveyed the digital solution providers and data consumers who are part of private beta to gather their feedback on the D-TRO onboarding and guidance. And I've also been running lots of interviews with each of our different user groups, mostly with the traffic authorities at this point in time, to understand more about their specific needs as a TRA. So one kind of piece of work here was to understand or investigate the transfer of ownership of TROs between councils and processes involved when boundaries change, for example. And yeah, so that's at a very high level. That's what's been happening so far, and a huge thank you to those of you who have participated in any of those sessions or completed the surveys. Your input has been hugely helpful in helping us to understand and investigate these different areas. And then very quickly, I can just walk through the kind of ongoing and future activity for user research. So obviously, we've now launched private beta, and between now and the end of November, there's going to be a few different bits of research activity happening. So I'm going to be sharing some further surveys to gather feedback on different parts of the service. I'll also be looking to run some remote one-to-one interviews with each of the different user groups. And we're also looking to run some remote workshops with traffic authorities to gather feedback in a kind of more focus group style setting. Something that I've also been doing over recent weeks, and I spoke about this last week too, but we've been running some kind of ad hoc surgery sessions with traffic authorities to try and provide support where we can. So whether this is answering any of your questions about the service or you have some more technical questions, these sessions are very much open to everyone. So please do reach out if these are of interest. I've also spoken to several TRAs who are working with in-house GIS systems, some of which are unsure whether their systems can be adapted to integrate with D-TRO. Others that we've spoken to are in the process of giving this a go currently, and we're having some very positive conversations with them. So we're keen to get this group of traffic authorities together and to share learnings. So we're now setting up a Teams channel to facilitate this. So again, if this is of interest, please don't hesitate to reach out and we can add you into that Teams channel. But yes, thanks again to those of you who are who have already offered up your time to get involved with user research. If you're keen to be involved in any of the activity in the grey box, or you've got any thoughts, feedback, questions for us at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to the D-TRO inbox. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lydia. Well, now time for my favourite bit, because I get to do more of the speaking, the Q&A. So the first question was, will historic TTROs be part of D-TRO? I mean, there's no real need to send old temporary orders into the service. I'm just thinking about if you're writing them for 18 months. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from sending them in. John Cooper, have you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think probably the question might be more around just the archive or library of orders that are still active, and do we want those as well as the new orders coming in? And I think that links into the forward secondary legislation program. As we have said before, this is coming, and when it does, it will set the dates, and we expect there to be a date for sending in new orders, and then a date further down the line for sending in those older orders. Just on the question of, do we keep anything in the service that is no longer active? Yes, we do plan to, because there are use cases for knowing what the old library of orders is. That will obviously only really come into its own a lot further down the line when time has passed after lots of orders being sent into the system.
Just to be clear, though, we do want new orders. It would be a Blue Monday if we weren't getting the new orders in. I think, John Cooper, we're trying to put the world in motion here, and we would regret not doing it.
Indeed. And we don't want to keep them going round and round either.
Hey, that's a more obscure one for you there, gang. Right, okay. Moving on. Lydia's totally confused about all of those boomer references. Right, okay. Will the DFT be providing advice, best practice for adding new TROs, as often these impact old TROs? Should we be revoking old ones, creating a new one for a larger area, or should we create new one, change the existing ones? Anyone fancy this? John Cooper, you want to tackle this beast?
I take the first stab at this one. Yeah, we have said this already, that we believe that perhaps when it does come to the point of tackling those old orders, that perhaps the most logical way of doing it, because those orders, let's face it, they might be paper-based ones that have got nowhere near being digitized, and then you're coming along in the digital era, you might want to consolidate those orders and publish a new digital order that actually brings a few or several orders together into one and publish them digitally, rather than trying to simply recreate an older order in a digital world.
Lovely. Thank you very much, John. I was so busy making bad new order puns that I missed a question. Does D-TRO include orders created for rights of way, which affect people or horses rather than traffic? I've had this question before, and maybe, John, we should add it into the FAQ. I might have to throw over to John Harrod Booth as I answer this, but so the answer is yes. And I believe you might not have a USRN that you can use to attach the order to, but that's okay. The USRN isn't a requirement, so if you don't have one, you don't have one. Anything I'm missing on that one, Johns?
Yeah, I wait for the statutory legislation as well, because that will, the secondary legislation that is, because that will add further detail on the minuter details of stuff like this. See also other types of orders we've been asked about. Are they in or are they not in? Those will become clearer when the secondary legislation is published in draft for consultation. Don't know if John's got a further view on that one.
I was just going to compliment and slightly tease apart Paul's comment, which is I agree with what John says, which is that the emerging secondary legislation will detail which orders need to be included. Where the orders relate to a road or street, and that road or street has a USRN, then there's an expectation that you will supply that as well. But we are aware that there are certain rights of way that do not have USRNs, and therefore you can't supply those. We recognise that is the current situation. So,
thanks, sirs. I'm down to 31 minutes, so it's a nail biter. How do we publish TROs made by a traffic regulation authority, but not via our digital service provider? Good question. One that we are working with stakeholders to tackle. John, did you want to maybe give an update on what we're doing about this?
Yeah, we are obviously open to TRAs that work with DSPs. And then, as Lydia mentioned, we're getting together the group that's discussing TRAs that use GIS software and perhaps don't use DSPs. Somewhere in the middle of those two situations, there may also be hybrid situations where a DSP works with a TRA for certain types of orders, but not all of them. The basic answer is that we do allow for all these situations. If the TRA is publishing their own orders, then they do need to be technically onboarded to a system. If they're working with the DSP and does all of them, then the DSP is onboarded. And if there's a hybrid situation, it's a kind of a, on one hand, they are onboarded and the other they aren't. So basically they would be onboarded. We can clarify in more detail on that. Whether or not in private beta, we need all the variants and permutations of this to be covered off is a moot point, but we are open to as many possible channels of the TRAs and DSPs publishing their orders to the system, and we'd like to get as many orders in the system as possible in quite a short time.
So Gary from Cornwall talks about how they've got one system for TROs, but TTROs are done by a different team, which is pretty standard. One thing I would say, Gary, is that you may find that your asset management system, or if you have a streetwork system, they may be working on a solution for this or already have one. So it's worth looking at what options you may have from existing software providers, because some of them are, more advanced with this and are definitely doing this and are probably communicating that to their users, and others are sort of looking into the possibility of doing it. So you never know, you might have something in-house that can do temporary traffic orders and you won't need to procure anything. You never know your luck. Keith says, if our map-based orders are not compatible with the newly proposed D-TRO system, will the DFT be funding any resulting DSP costs? I think it's worth looking at the FAQs there, Keith, for one thing, because it does probably talk about the new burdens question that will be addressed in 2025. But one thing I would say is that we are committed to making the service work with the map-based GIS systems that people have got in-house where possible. So, obviously we can't do every format or make it backwards compatible, but we're talking to people. Stockport have been really good on this. For instance, we've had some calls with them. We've talked to them about what changes they would need to make in their system. So we're happy to sort of bring people together and set up a little group like John talked about, and all that good stuff. So yeah, we're not just saying you need to procure something and good luck. Nothing like that. Just flicking through the chat here. Yeah, I would take on board what you're saying about wanting more from the policy side. That's perfectly reasonable. I understand that. We've had Sally Kendall lined up for these webinars before, and she's said to us, I'm not really in a position to say anything at the moment. So as soon as she is in a position to say stuff, we'll have her as a guest of honor on whatever webinar it might be, and she'll be able to talk about the consultation and all that sort of good stuff. I mean, we've not really looked too much into the costs or affordability, Jack. we've done quite a lot of work around looking into the volumes. So John Cooper, if you give him half a moment, will tell you all about how many people we think have got a digital solution for temps and how many for perms and stuff. We haven't gone into it too much in the costs. If the New Burdens team need to do that, then we will do that with them. Okay, what else have we got? Oh, excellent new order pun there from someone. Very good. Are there any penalties if we miss the final deadline? John Cooper, did you want to talk about the consequences of being in breach of regulation, perhaps?
That's always an interesting one, isn't it? When legislation comes in, and what are the penalties? I'm sure, as this is a new service coming in, that there will be a certain amount of leniency, as it were, in terms of meeting deadlines and being able to post. We shall see what the draft legislation says in terms of the dates that are being expected to be met. There will be the consultation on those content of the secondary legislation. So it could be a situation where the draft dates aren't the same as the final dates, for example. In my experience, it is quite rare for very draconian measures to be put down against errant local authorities that don't meet certain things that they are supposed to send. I would expect that stiff letters from the Secretary of State for Transport might come into play and stuff like that, but I can't really comment on what the actual measures for non-compliance will be. That would have to be something worked out in consultation with the policy side and any other part of government that deals with generally non-compliance with legislation.
Maybe they'll be touched by the hand of God, John Cooper. Is there, and I don't know what you can say on this, John, is there a rough timescale for the secondary legislation that you can talk about out loud on a webinar?
Yeah, I believe we are allowed to say that later this year is the planned anticipated time for the draft legislation to come out. I can't really go any further than that, but that gives you a rough idea of the timescales. What with the statutory, I believe, 12-week consultation period. It's we're talking in those are the outline timings for it that we would expect to see.
Thank you very much, John. Edward, there are no stupid questions. Is there a list of actions that we must take before formal go live? This was useful when Street Manager was rolled out. That sounds like useful feedback for our stakeholder engagement team to me. We can take that away and have a little think about doing something that just sort of sets out steps. And Gareth, when we were launching Street Manager, we did a kind of like 5 weeks to go, 4 weeks to go, 3 weeks to go type thing. And we could certainly, think about some of that stuff.
Absolutely. Yes, sounds really good.
I mean, I think on that, obviously the knowing the dates will help. We won't know those until the secondary legislation is finalised. But we do anticipate going into a public beta sooner than that. So when we get into that point where we've hopefully passed all our assessments and we are given full rein to proceed, improve, and enhance and step up the volume of the service, yes, there will definitely be more comms on who is expected to do what by when. Not least because in the private beta, we're only working with a small cohort, but in public beta, we'd like to see that cohort expand out as widely and as quickly as possible, ideally. We'll do all we can to assist and tell people what's going on and when it's going to happen.
Thanks, John. There's a question here that's been, Gareth, are you on camera? Because you've got a burning desire to come in, by the way. No, he's gone off. Will the secondary legislation enforce the digital signing and sealing of TROs? That's been answered in the chat, but yeah, just to be clear, we aren't, the signing and sealing of TROs happens however it happens in your organization at the moment. That carries on, and you're just putting a, dare I say these words out loud, a digital twin of that out onto the service. You know, we're not replacing what you're doing with your wax seal or whatever it is you need to do legally as per your legal advice. No, carry on with that. Gonzalo says, how will we deal with situations where a TRA has moved from one supplier to another, basically? I mean, I would simply say, you know, what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas effectively. So if you've already sent it to us, it doesn't need to be resent. Like, we've got the order of it. Just start doing the new stuff in the new service provider, but we're happy to take any of those questions, you know, as they come, you know, once we get into the real world scenarios.
Yeah, and I think also on that, obviously in the product environment, the DSP is linked by intrinsically via the app ID to each TRA it works with. If that link at some point further down the line changes so that it's a different DSP, or even that TRA goes it alone and wants to publish its own orders itself, then we would make sure that the links are updated and it works fully even in the new situation. As to what happens to the legacy of the orders that were created by one DSP that now works with a different one, then we would have to just make sure that all of that is good. But there are also many other issues to do with legacy ongoing as years pass. There's the versioning in the data specification. So one order might be made 1 year under one version, and then several years later it's extracted, and the version number has now risen many times. So we need to make sure that all our version controlling is in there, and it's an interesting subject, but not something we're going to go into now.
Thanks, John. So there's a good chat. There's a good chat in the chat about what's in scope and what isn't, and you know, the town and country, the Town Police Clauses Act, you know, parking orders that might not strictly meet the definition of a TRO. What I would say on that is, and as service owner, allow me to dream a little bit here. Once we've built the service, and once we are collecting the legally required information, I want to go above and beyond that if people have information they want to give to us, you know. So the classic example for me is yellow box junctions. You know, we've been told by people, oh, well, we capture that in the same system where we do our TROs. Well, you know, send that information into us. You know, we can update the data model if we need to incorporate these things. So it won't be a legal requirement. And I'm not saying you need to do it, but if you have that information in the same place and want to send it to us, you know, go for it. Okay. Yeah, I think speed limits will definitely be covered. Yeah, interesting some questions around speed limits in the chat. We can get into this when the consultation comes out, guys. That will make that a bit easier. Is the ultimate aim to have a D-TRO system that will encompass all TRA orders, because it seems rather inefficient for TRAs to have to maintain separate systems records? Any thoughts on that, John? Because obviously, as we've just said, we're not sort of taking the place of the legal documents, so there would be a need to maintain the digital record as well as your own record in your system.
Yeah, obviously D-TRO is not about the creation of orders, and generally doesn't it's not something that the TRAs or DSPs actually use themselves in that aspect. It's a centralized repository for the orders to be sent to us. It's the same format also for temporary or permanent, or for speed limits. They all adhere to the same data specification. If it's up to the TRA to whether or not they want to work on it themselves, or to work with a DSP for DSP1 for perm and DSP2 for temps, or even have a third option where they do some of them themselves. That is entirely open to each TRA to decide the way in which to do it. Some may decide they like doing it that way, and others might have the simplicity perhaps of using only one route to make their orders go to the system.
Thanks, John. So Michael says, very new to this, is there a list of DSPs? The problem is, Michael, that as the government, I can't, reel off a list to you here, because if I forgot someone, that would be wrong, or I can't say X is better than Y. Feel free to jump in with any thoughts, John Cooper. I would recommend Michael goes and speaks to neighbouring authorities, maybe, or anyone else.
We've published a beta participant list on our GitHub. That would be where I would suggest you go to see, because we've categorized them by here are the TRAs, and here are the DSPs, and here are the data consumers. So there is a list on there. We're not saying it's the complete list of anyone who ever will be a digital solution provider or a data consumer. There's probably hundreds more data consumers out there who might want to extract our TRO data. And it's not a complete list of all the TRAs either. It's just the ones who have said they're interested in participating in the private beta, and some of those are with DSPs. Therefore, there's multiple TRAs to one DSP, and then some of on the list are TRAs that do it themselves with the GIS software.
Thank you, John. Tim would suggest the publication of things to do to D-TRO will depend on what the system is intended to be used for. Yeah, I take the point, Tim. I suppose when you're putting open data out there, you never quite know what people are going to do with it until they've got it. Even now, 4 years into live running, new open data users still keep popping up on to Street Manager, and people are taking the data, and we're adding things to that service like the hazardous material stuff that we've just done that was, not something I ever considered. So, once you've got these services online, they do, grow and improve and develop, and, first things first, as always, let's get this thing built, up and running, the consultation out, the legal requirements, and we'll go from there. Yeah, Jack says worth approaching your GIS team about how it works. Yeah, totally. Thanks very much, Jack. That's good, and you're always welcome onto the group that's talking about the GIS stuff. Lydia, have you spoken to anyone in Sunderland?
I don't think I have, no.
There you go. I was talking to the glorious Stephen Black about Streetworks only the other week when I was in Durham, but we didn't get to talk about digital traffic orders, but I did update him on the project as part of the roadshow event that we did. Okay. Well, Thank you very much, Joanne. Sorry for laughing. Right, okay. I think that's all the questions we've got time for. I am now down to 9% and 15 minutes. So I did make it through this webinar, but I better not push it anymore. Any final words of wisdom, John Cooper? Oh, the engagement program. Sorry, forgive me. Go ahead. Go ahead. Gareth.
Hi everyone. So I've nearly run out of power, which is why I've had to move quickly. But just an update on the engagement program. So the next Table Tool webinar is going to be on the 4th of November. But in the meantime, do use GitHub as per usual to raise any issues there. The next webinar, like this one, is going to be on the 21st of November, and we'll be issuing invites for both those shortly. So keep an eye on your inboxes for those. Next time we're going to be getting together in person is going to be for the Transport Technology Autumn Conference. That's in Birmingham, and that's on the 12th of November. So we'll certainly be doing a presentation on D-TRO at that event, and it'd be good to see anyone in person there. And then just in terms of further information, I think most folk are pretty familiar with this list by now, but we've got the Transport Technology Forum. That's our kind of website, our hub for information, and that's got our announcements, newsletters, etc. on there. It's also got FAQ. We've touched on that today a few times, and we do spend quite a lot of time and effort seeking to keep that maintained and updated as quickly as possible. We've got the GitHub, of course. There's a lot of good technical discussion on the GitHub, but it has got other useful information for the service. And John mentioned the list, for example, of who's involved in private beta. And then finally, we've got the email. People know this already. It's dtro@dft.gov.uk. And then we've got the YouTube playlist as well. So I think that's it. And to further information, that was all I was going to add. So I think Paul's power's finally died. So it'll be over to me unless I'm looking at John, who's sitting next to me. Unless anyone else has got anything to add, we'll close the webinar now. Thanks all, and thanks again for attending. And we'll be in touch soon, and we'll see you on the next one of these soon. Bye then.